Sam Sutton is probably one of the best kayakers I ever paddled with.
He's just a super smooth paddler, and I love to be able to paddle with him because I can just learn so much from him just by watching him.
He's a really amazing paddler.
When I paddle with him, I feel pretty safe.
He has this right amount of redness, I guess.
Ich bereise jetzt schon seit 20 Jahren.
I've been traveling the world with my kayak for the past 20 years, and since 10 years I have my camera with me to document our adventures and experiences. Sam Sutton is an extraordinary kayaker. He's the Extreme Kayak World Champion. Whitewater is his element, no matter whether he runs high waterfalls, deep remote gorges, or play waves. He's an all-arounder. For me, it was truly an enrichment to accompany him with my camera last year.
My name's Sam Sutton. I'm 22 years old from Rotorua, New Zealand. I've been kayaking now for 6 years, and kayaking is my life, and my life is kayaking. The reason I like kayaking is not the aspect of the sport as itself, it's more about the journey that kayaking takes you on. As a kayaker, I enjoy traveling around the world with my friends, having a great time and in search of the world's best rivers or the next river god.
Kayakers refer to the river god as the perfect whitewater with clean lines embedded in stunning scenery. To find these river gods, Extreme Kayak World Champion Sam Sutton and kayak filmmaker Olaf Obsommer travel the world together with their mates of the Adidas Sickline team. One of the most challenging journeys takes them to Siberia. Russia, the largest country in the world. It extends across the whole of Northern Asia and across 40% of Europe, spanning 9 time zones. 143 million people and 160 different ethnic groups live within its borders. Russia has the world's largest forest reserves and contains approximately 1/4 of the world's fresh water. Thousands of rivers with difficult whitewater make it a paradise for extreme kayakers.
So in 2009, a teammate, Thomas Mannix, came forward with an idea to go to the Bajkaus River and Altai Mountains in Russia and to try do the Book of Legends section. Now what the Book of Legends section is a group of 10 Russians tried to do the first descent, and they were using these really old crafts, and when they went down through the river, they got about halfway and they flipped the raft, and 6 of them drowned out of the 10, so there are only 4 survivors. And the next year, the group of 4 survivors returned to that place, and they put a big plaque up there, and they wrote a book for everybody that ever makes it through there.
Ten kayakers from 6 different countries traveled to the Altai Mountains in the heart of Siberia to take up the extreme challenge of trying the Book of Legends section on the infamous Bajkaus River. Due to its technical difficulty and remoteness, it's considered Russia's most dangerous river for whitewater kayaking. In the event of things going wrong, the expedition members have to fend for themselves as they are isolated from the outside world. When compiling an expedition team, one of the most important aspects is certainly the social criteria, that people get along with each other. Helpful are also specific skills the expedition members can bring in. For instance, being a mechanic or speaking the local language. Having a doctor on board also helps a lot. And you need someone who is well-versed in canyoning, climbing, and rope techniques. Combine all of this together, and you have the ideal group of people.
We really worked hard on our team dynamics before we even went on the trip. We picked people that would all work together. Once we arrived on the river, it was pretty clearly evident that everybody kind of knew their role and everybody really worked together and they watched each other's back. Because when you're kayaking, it's more than a friend, it's more like a lifeline, okay? They're your lifeline, they're the ones that are going to save you.
Organizing such an expedition is always a huge challenge in itself, starting with arranging transport in a remote foreign country. In Russia, we hired 2 minibuses, which actually looked more like toy cars. At first sight, we were a bit skeptical if these 2 vehicles could really take us everywhere we wanted to go.
Dorthin bringen können, wo wir hin wollten.
So a lot of the times in Russia, I mean, you're just so remote that the road just stops and you're still not at the river. Walking up to 10 kilometers to get to the river and you're carrying 3 days worth of equipment and your kayak, so about 40 kgs. Before we could pick up the courage to take on the Book of Legends section, we decided to paddle the Kayaking and the Chulishman, which were multi-day rivers. So you're taking all of your equipment for about 3 days, including all the food and all your supplies that you need.
If you do a multi-day trip, you have to plan precisely. First, you must estimate how long you will need for the route, as this determines how much food you must bring along. And you plan every single gram, because a kayak is limited in load, of course. If it's too heavy, you cannot navigate properly. The nutrition on this trip is quite simple. You try to find something that is very filling while weighing very little.
Genauso wenig wiegt.
Everything that you take has to serve a certain purpose, and I mean, you're not going to take an extra chopping board to chop some tomatoes up. You're going to use the bottom of your kayak. You're not going to take another knife because you have a knife for safety in your life jacket. And everything that you take is going to serve multiple purposes, and you get really inventive of what you're going to use. In Russia, we were just faced with huge amounts of water, and you're looking down these rivers and you're faced with a wall of water. You can't even see where you're going. You can't see any of your teammates because you're down in the hollow, and it's just like paddling against God's hand, you know. It's just out there trying to take you down, and you just got to be strong and get through it. It's quite good. We did these warm-up rivers, which was still extremely difficult. But after about 2 weeks of warming up, we finally had the courage and the skills to try take on the Book of Legends section.
But before paddling Siberia's legendary river, the group has to take another hurdle.
Auf unserem Weg
On our way to the Bashkaus, we have to drive 7 hours, and somewhere down the road we were stuck. Since we were all tired, we went to sleep. On the next morning, we woke up and had to find out that our entire motor was fragmented. The cylinder head gasket was broken, lying on the grass. This made us a bit nervous, of course, as we didn't know if this was the end of our trip and if we had to hold out on this metal for the next 2 weeks waiting for something to happen. Fortunately, our 2 drivers managed to put our cars together again, and after 1.5 days, we could drive on.
dass wir weiterfahren konnten.
We've finally arrived at our ultimate goal of trying to do the Book of Legends section on the Bashkaus. That morning we were all sitting around camp and it was extremely silent. Everybody was super focused. You could hear the drop of a pin. When we were finally ready, we all put in our kayaking gear, and it was like putting your armor on, getting ready to go to battle. And everybody is just extremely focused on that moment. Everything else from outside life had just completely disappeared, and you're focused on that sole moment and that sole goal. Paddling through the Bajkaus, the whole time in the back of your mind you've got, 40 people have drowned here. In 2007, Thomas lost his friend. And it's extremely hard to stay focused, and just concentrate on what you're doing. But when you enter the Bajkaus, you're a princess. And when you come out of the Bajkaus, you're a man. After 2 hard days of battling the Bajkaus, we finally arrived to the Book of Legends. And there's a little newspaper article about the expedition leader, who was a rafting legend, explaining what had happened. And just at that moment, it was really a pinnacle moment from the whole expedition. You're looking down at the river, and all of these emotions come up from within, and you're just thinking about friends that you had lost in the river, and what's really important to you in life, and at that stage you just see life in pure clarity.
Russia was by all means extraordinary. There were so many overwhelming impressions. The country is unique and the whitewater is mind-blowing. There are few places in the world where you find such an abundance of challenging multi-day rivers.
Solchen Flüssen findet, wo dann Mehrtagestouren möglich sind. Für mich persönlich war Russland.
For me personally, Russia was very strenuous. I actually reached my performance limit. After all, I'm not only paddling, I also have to film at the same time, and that really wore me out.
Und das hat ganz schön an mir gezerrt.
After 3 weeks in Russia, paddling up to 10 hours a day and hundreds of kilometers on Class 5 rivers, the Adidas Sickline team is looking for a new challenge. Their next journey takes them to the so-called Kingdom of Waterfalls, to Iceland. The volcanically and geologically active island country in the North Atlantic Ocean is home to the largest waterfalls in Europe.
As a kayaker, we want to explore the world, and we're always talking about the next destination we'd like to go to. And turned out that all of us actually wanted to go to Iceland and explore the waterfall paradise. We didn't really have a plan as such. We found these postcards, and we just purchased every postcard that had a waterfall that looked like we wanted to kayak. And what we found really was just an abundance of waterfalls, from low volume waterfalls to big volume waterfalls to really high waterfalls. The incentive for a kayaker to approach a waterfall is just the aspect of flying, really. And once you approach the waterfall, you can tell if it's runnable or not runnable. Okay, we can see how the water's moving at the bottom and whether it's deep or not. And then you can see if it's feasible to run it, if it's not too risky. So when we come up to the waterfall lip, we're studying the approach, we're studying the lip, which is kind of the crux of the movement, and you're just wanting to know how you can make the process. We make some markers. We say, okay, well, I want to be there, so that's point A. We want to be there at point B. We want to be there at point C, and then we've got the perfect line.
And this process can partly take several days until you've decided that you feel good, that you are confident, that you found your line and want to run the waterfall. Needless to say that there is a disproportion between effort and pleasure. Running a waterfall might take 2 or 3 seconds depending on its height, but the approach has taken several hours up to 2 or 3 days.
War dann mehrere Stunden bis zu 2, 3 Tage. Ja.
You're not really memorizing the line as such, but you're more memorizing the feeling that you're going to be doing. When we're kayaking up to the waterfall, you could be blinded by a splash of water, so it's all about the feeling and the movement of how your body's reacting with the water. And when you come up to the waterfall and you finally get that sensation of free fall, it's just a pure moment, and you just wish you could last in that moment forever. But surely enough, you hit the bottom and it's a little bit of an impact, but the reward is definitely worth the risk. So once you're flying off this waterfall and you're free falling, you still have to stay focused because the impact is approaching, and depending on the waterfall, you either let go of your paddle or you can tuck it up beside you. If you let go of your paddle, what it means is that there's less chance for injury, but it has to be a safe pull at the bottom. And I found this out last year when I actually didn't let go of my paddle and I broke the socket, my eye socket. You really want to let go of the paddle and hold onto the kayak and just await the impact. But it's really important that you brace and tuck up nice and tight.
For the ultimate challenge, the kayakers travel north to the highlands of Iceland, home of the famous Aldeafoss.
On Aldeafoss in Iceland, it's a really high waterfall, 20 meters, and there's a lot of water going over it. And you come off up to the waterfall and you start flying, and then you let go of your paddle, you hold on, and you know this impact's coming. And then all of a sudden it just hits you, a huge impact, just like having a car crash, you know, your head's shaking, it feels like your brain's been pushed on reset button and starting up again. Once you get your orientation back and you roll back up and you jump up and celebrate life, and you still have a big headache, but pain is temporary and glory is forever.
Ich habe schon viele Befragungen.
I've seen many descendants of the Aldeafoss also in other film productions, and each time I was wondering if this is more of a test of courage or a demonstration of exceptional paddling skills. And so far, it always seemed like a huge test of courage to me, until Sam came and conjured this magical line, providing that you actually can run this waterfall in a controlled manner instead of getting sucked down, like being in a flush and resurfacing somehow.
Und dann wie auch immer wieder aufzutauchen.
In Iceland, we also came across a great waterfall called Selfoss, and the beauty of this waterfall is when you come off the waterfall, the job's only half done. I mean, when you land, you've got a huge section of rapids right there, so when you come off the waterfall, it's very crucial that you come off perfectly. And then you have to navigate perfectly through these huge waves, which is just, for us kayakers, it's the ultimate. I mean, you've got a big waterfall and then you've got technical difficulty straight after that. In Iceland, it was quite funny. We almost kayaked more vertical kilometers than we did horizontal kilometers. And that was really the nature of the kayaking in Iceland. It was more about the waterfalls than really kayaking down a river. That was the best thing that we took away from Iceland, is just this good experience at running waterfalls. And I think all of us improved significantly at just the perfect technique of running waterfalls.
From Europe's least populated country, where breathtaking icebergs float in picturesque glacial lagoons, the Adidas Sickline team moves on to warmer regions. Their next destination is Mexico. Invited by their friend Rafael Ortiz, one of the most renowned waterfall kayakers in the world, the team travels to Chiapas, to the southeast of Mexico. The state that borders to Guatemala and the Pacific Ocean holds about 30% of Mexico's freshwater resources. Chiapas is located in the tropical belt of the planet. The climate is hot and humid. Chiapas rainforests are home to thousands of unique animals and plants, some of which cannot be found anywhere else in the world.
The Santo Domingo drew our attention because it's the steepest river that's ever been kayaked. And by that I mean it's got the most gradient per mile out of any river that's been kayaked in the world. It was also an extremely inaccessible area, so it was a really steep gorge, so we had to abseil down and lower our kayaks down, which is extremely hard work. And again, we had to be kayakers, climbers, canyoneers, and mountain heroes really. We finally get to the first horizon line, and straight away your heart just starts pumping. I mean, your pulse is increasing rapidly, and you're standing on top of this like a stairway to heaven, you know, it's just going down, dropping off the face of the earth. We have these really big waterfalls that flow directly into the next really big waterfall. So your line has to be perfect, and you really have to be confident in yourself that you'll make it. There's just no room for error. If you make consequences, it could be deadly. So as a kayaker, we're always trying to find the ultimate river, the ultimate section, and yeah, it gets referred to as the river god. This year we were really fortunate enough to find one of the river gods. The river's called the Agua Azul, which means blue water. From a kayaker's point of view, it was like a kayaker's heaven. I mean, you could have easily thought you'd found your Eden. What we found is just this really rich blue water flowing through this green jungle and this perfect temperature, and then just cascading off these huge waterfalls. And it wasn't like a huge waterfall and then a huge flat pool, it was just a huge waterfall, a nice recovery pool, and then another huge waterfall, and then another nice recovery pool. So it was a true river god for us. Although the Agua Azul has been kayaked before, what we found is a first descent waterfall. It was about 25 meters high. And the reason the waterfall hadn't been kayaked before is because of the extremely narrow lip. The width of your kayak is the width of the line, and if you're offline slightly, the consequences are going to be catastrophic. We had to spend about 3 hours searching and checking that it was all safe, and we finally picked up the courage and looked at each other and hoping that somebody else would like to go, and in the end you just have to, you know, take it on yourself, and you're paddling up to this lip and just hoping and praying that you're in the right spot and that it's nice and deep. The majority of the time when we're kayaking, we're way out in the wilderness, there's nobody around, there's nobody to watch you. But what we found on the Agua Azul is this tourist destination, and it was really crazy for us, you know, it was like we were a soccer player with a whole crowd of people watching us, which never really happens for us.
The Agua Azul is a river god because it combines two things: the beauty of nature and the shape and the alignment of its waterfalls. Our search for the river god hasn't been completed yet. It's never ending. There are so many challenges waiting for us, so many river gods that still need to be discovered, that we will definitely carry on.
Dass wir da auf alle Fälle nahtlos weitermachen werden.